so I have to talk very loud. Oh, I have to talk so loud. That's going to be so annoying because I have to talk so loud, right? Okay. But if you can handle the background noise, you might actually. Oh, I don't put subtitles on. Can't you do it yourself? Like, really? I've made the effort to give you the message. It's up to you to put your own subtitles on. Yeah, this is one of the things that annoys me. Well, we have to have subtitles, or we have to have captions, or else we don't know what we're hearing. Well, if you can't read, then I don't understand. I mean, if most people struggle with literacy these days, you can't hear? Well, I don't know, but put on your own subtitles and captions. It'll give you something to do, something valuable to do with your time. So I was listening to Clay Travis, and he says he's from Tennessee. He sounds like he's a robot trying to sound like he's from the Midwest. He always talks like this. It's just so fake. However, what he said today was really good. Well, of course, I was not born in 1976. Well, I was only 4 years old in 1976. I remember Pet Rocks. You remember Pet Rocks? You don't remember Pet Rocks? You don't know nothing, right? You know nothing, right? Oh, that's Colonel Click. You missed out on so much. My husband was born 3 years before I was, and he's telling me about Sigmund and the Sea Monster. I'm like, that is so lame. It is so lame. I would never watch that. I'm a Valley girl for sure. Yeah. Stop being a big old fake anyway. But, I agree with the idea that we need to remember the American sacrifices. You see, I came from a family that's not so atypical. Grandparents, one set of grandparents came from the Nazi era, and they didn't really like America, and they really didn't like the Jews. But they were never anti-American. They just played up their German culture, like, oh, Germany's so wonderful, Germany's so great, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. And then on the other side of the family, those grandparents, one of those actually served in World War II and actually acquired deafness because he worked for an intelligence, the United States Army intelligence, and he was listening. And because the bombing was so loud in Paris, it damaged his hearing permanently. But I heard Clay Travis talking about how these young guys, like 18, 19 years old, the first time they rode in an airplane, they parachuted out of it. They're, all right, now just jump and pull the cord. Wow, the sacrifices that we made. I did travel to Europe one time because my father's mother encouraged my father to pay for it, even though I know they didn't have the money. They probably had to borrow money from somewhere to allow me to have this wonderful opportunity to go to Europe. I remember being in London, and it was a tour bus, and you have jet lag, and you feel like absolute crap. And I want to tell you, folks, I was constipated for 2 weeks because of that jet lag. I couldn't poop for 2 weeks, and I got fat. So it wasn't a great experience. But it wasn't, it could have been worse, I guess. But there was this attractive, young, wealthy American couple that had taken their children on this trip, this field trip, the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And they were, I guess Americans talk loud. Well, I have to talk loud over the roar of my engine, made by Korean people. So go figure, but it sounds like it's a Ford Mustang. I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. Put on the captions. I said, get the subtitles enabled. I don't have to. Do I have to wipe your butt for you after you poop? Now, please do something for yourself. My grandparents were never that rude. I'm just turning into like a really frank person. Yeah. So these people, they're young, they're attractive, and the guy, of course, he's like, well, why do they disrespect Americans so much? We did so much for you during World War II. And the English guy is like, well, I don't really know. I don't know that. I was like, I'm so embarrassed. Like, this guy is like really, 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 really obnoxious. And like, he's really stereotypically ugly American. He's just making a big deal out of, how we sacrifice so much and you're so ungrateful. Well, the truth is the truth. Even American children these days don't even know what we did, how we kept Nazism out, because the ocean was just a bit too, the ocean was a bit too vast. Yeah, that was our saving grace. Correct? Am I incorrect? Look what they did to those poor people in England, and I feel bad about it because my name is Erica, and they think, well, you're a German and you want to kill everybody in London. And no, listen, my grandparents were probably kind of neutral. The one set of grandparents were probably neutral during World War II, but the other set of grandparents had invested everything into defeating the Nazis, and they even had a German surname. So, American, that's why Americanism transcends anybody's ethnicity, because if you have shed your blood for other people's freedom, then you're in a very special club. And my grandfather almost lost his life during World War II. And another thing, my ancestors weren't even here during the era of slavery. I mean, they emigrated to the north. They didn't go to the south. They didn't own slaves. Well, you're going to blame me for something that is still happening today in Islamic countries and in Africa. They still have slavery. You don't complain about that. Oh, but you B&M. Oh, it sounds like Black Lives Matter. You B&M, trying to be discreet here, about the injustices of the planet. What about the injustices that are happening today, even to Africans who are hired to work in an Arabian country, and they're mistreated and they're molested? What do you think about that? My dad used to say, "How do you like them apples?" And my dad was not an obnoxious, overbearing person. Well, he was, but anyway, well, never mind. You can't explain him. He was a man that really didn't really like America that much. He wasn't like super patriotic toward America. My mother was definitely more patriotic toward America, but of course he'd been raised in a household that idolized this guy with the tiny mustache. I mean, because this guy was these people, it's like, sort of like, an experimental version of the Antichrist. I mean, that's how I describe Hitler. That's true. Girl, you know it's true. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So, I mean, everything white is not right. Yeah, definitely everything white is not right. I mean, how do you think the English feel about getting bombed in London? Hitler wanted to make them part of his empire. Hitler was enamored of the English. He had a very strange obsession with them, You're an obsession. You're my obsession. And so that he love bombed them. Literally, he love bombed them. Isn't it romantic? No, I wouldn't say so. Yeah, so, And then we're learning things about how we've been. Clay Travis today was talking about how we're not even being taught about the heroism of Americans in American history. I mean, the great heroism, we're not being taught that. I mean, it was even downplayed that my grandfather, like, I only learned as an adult, he had served on behalf of the French people. This was not our battle. Hitler was not attacking us. Well, the Japanese did attack us, that's true. And one thing my dad did talk about from World War II, well, he talked about a lot of things, because he was born in 1940, before we were entangled in the war. Do you realize that? And so I will repeat the knowledge that he imparted to me. My father respected Asian people. He would never say a bad word about Asian people. But he said, those Japanese were never punished for the atrocities that they committed during World War II. That was a bit unfair. Do you know the atrocities that they committed? The Bataan Death March, and what they did to the Chinese, and what they did to the Koreans, and they're never, ever punished for it. Boy, it makes me so upset. In Nuremberg, people were being executed for doing what they did to the Jews. You know what I'm saying? But my father, other than, complaining about how it was unequal treatment after World War II, he would never say anything bad about Asian people. He admired them so much. They are studious, they're tidy, they're intelligent, they're hardworking. That's everything I'm not, I guess. But we all have to live on the same planet, don't we? Yeah, bro. So, if you happen to not look Caucasian enough, there is a caste system in the United States, or you don't live in the right zip code. I mean, it's economic, it's cultural. Well, you're a white person. You have naturally great hair. I'll tell you who doesn't have great hair. Dolly Parton. She always wore a wig. Always. I remember staying, because I had a lot of different babysitters, and one couple happened to be from West Virginia, and they were kind of short people. My dad called them dwarves, but their children, their son was tall and their daughter was short. So there was dwarfism, and one might surmise when there is a little too much cousins marrying cousins, these mutations occur. But they were pretty nice to me until their Doberman Pinscher Gretchen bit me. That was kind of crappy. But the lady that was babysitting me said, Dolly Parton, she never shows her natural hair, and she just admired Dolly Parton so much. And I guess Dolly Parton's still alive, and I guess her hair, she's had a lot of plastic surgery. It's like, how is this woman just hang on as a celebrity? I'm not sure that I want to admire her. Why am I being forced to admire her? And another thing, when I stayed over, with those babysitters before the dog bit me, they had these little Matchbox cars, and I was a little too old to be playing with toys. I was about 10 years old or something. It was like shortly after my brother's birth or whatever, and I started playing with those, and then I just looked at her in fear. I said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be playing with these toys. I should be more mature. Little girls shouldn't play with Matchbox cars. And they're like, oh, it's fine, you can play with Matchbox cars. What? It's like I thought I was doing something wrong. Because I was being infantile, I was being juvenile, playing with toys. Regressing somehow. My dad loved to use all that psychological terminology anyway. So at the end of the day, what do we do? Well, you gotta warn everybody that Jesus is coming back, and he's coming back, and he's gonna be kicking some butt. be better for you to be raptured than to go through the tribulation. And even if you have to listen. If you don't listen, then you're missing out. Blaming the parents' generation. We blame them for being so uptight and weird and obsessive compulsive. I mean, that's one thing my parents were not. Well, maybe Dad was a little bit, but that's sort of like, do you sometimes see interesting parallels? After I married my husband, I saw interesting parallels between my father and his mother and my mother and his father. It's almost as if they were the same personalities, only they switched genders. So would you say that my dad was obsessive? He was obsessive compulsive in his own way. In his own way he was. That's true. That's the way people cope with things. And other people are just happy-go-lucky, haha. They're so happy-go-lucky, they make you miserable. They want to avoid emotional pain at all costs, so they start making jokes all the time, and it's not, or they get drunk or whatever. This would be the parallel. Somebody who's always making corny jokes and ignoring other people's emotional pain and suffering. And then the parallel is the person who's almost constantly inebriated when they're at home. Okay, I'm drawing a parallel there. Well, your dad, my mom. Oh. So I'm seeing all this stuff happening. It's like, why in the world are you bringing all these ignorant, stupid, fat, greedy, dishonest people into your country? I do not understand it. I'm not talking about Mexico because 99% of them they work and they deserve every penny they get, unless obviously if they're in the drug trade. The Mexicans are really almost the ones that come to America are the model citizen, if you ask me. So don't paint everybody with a broad brush. I remember reading years ago in the National Geographic, as my dad really tried to be literate and cultured, much like Robert Maxwell tried to be literate and cultured. You're just a Jew. You're a Jew. You don't fool me, Robert Maxwell. You're not. Nobody fools us. Oh no. It's just a name that he just made up. He just chose it. He just totally faked his identity. And he wasn't good for the English society, but that began, it didn't begin the decline. The decline was already happening. Now in England, my goodness gracious, all the stuff about the grooming gangs. Now listen, I want to tell you as an American, don't be so effing naive. Listen to your mother if you want to have conversations with her. There was grooming happening with white people in my society in the 1980s because my mother naively got me a job at this place, and most of the teenage girls there were prostituting themselves to white men and older men, adult men, married men even. They were prostituting themselves. So I want to tell you, this grooming thing is not a new thing. It's just hitting you and talking about the HTM4 and it's causing all these problems. No, it's not. It's the unbelievers that cause all the problems. Sexually exploiting young women. I wasn't one of them. I just wasn't. It was a rampant thing at that place where I worked. It was the Dariette. A rampant thing. I mean, really, the percentage of slutty girls was extremely high. And in the midst of Amish country, you have so many whores. Why? What? The parents didn't teach them any values? I mean, I heard stories. It's like, I don't even want to hear this. Oh, yeah, I passed out drunk and he screwed me over several times. You're hearing this on the school bus? This is where my speaking in tongues comes in. I think that's where it activates, you know. I don't want to hear any of this degenerate crap. So, you know, just because people are white in skin tone doesn't mean that they're pure as the driven snow. What a bunch of nonsense that is. And by the way, we're always trying to get tan anyway. It's like I could never get that tan. But, you know, so this is my final word. Why would you be envious of other people, thinking, oh, they have a better life. Their life is so much better. If I was smart enough to get a college degree, I'd be rich. I was smart enough to get 3 college degrees, and I ain't rich, baby. Because, well, you're not one of the privileged ones. You know, college only exists to enrich a very small percentage of people that preach liberalism and anti-Americanism and communism and everything else. You know, you don't belong here. You're not one of us. When did that change? When did that change? Well, during the 1960s, the university system became infiltrated with a bunch of effing communists. What else can I say? What else can I say, folks? I think you have said enough. And why don't you just upload it? And then maybe little children will listen to it and they'll understand it. I hope so. But if they get subtitles, it might be much better. Or captions. Because I can't speak in every accent. I can do any accent, but I can't do them all at once. God bless you. And God bless America.